The silent returned the Council's confidence for over 3,000 years. The Galactic Dominion Council had ruled the stars with absolute authority. 3 mighty empires formed this alliance. The warrior Corvan Empire, with their battle-scarred ships, the mystical, ethereal collective with their energy-based technology, and the industrious Nexarai Federation with their massive manufacturing worlds. Together, they controlled every trade route, every habitable planet, and every species that dared to venture beyond their home systems. High Regent Vorthok of the Dominion Council stood in the grand observatory of the capital station, Celestial Prime, watching the endless streams of tribute ships arriving from conquered worlds. The alien leader's 4 arms gestured proudly as he addressed the weekly assembly. Brothers of the Void, his voice echoed through the crystalline halls. Another year passes where no force in this galaxy dares challenge our supremacy. The lesser races bow, the rebels are crushed, and order reigns supreme. Admiral Vex of the Corvan Empire, a towering reptilian warrior with scales that gleamed like polished metal, nodded approvingly. His people had conquered 100 worlds. Through pure military might, and their war fleets patrolled every sector. The galaxy knows its place, he growled, his voice like grinding stone. Any species foolish enough to resist learns quickly that the Dominion's reach is infinite, and our patience is not. Counselor Zephyr of the Ethereal Collective, a being of pure energy contained within a shimmering, translucent form, pulsed with satisfied light. Her people had mastered technologies that seemed like magic to others, bending space and time to their will. The natural order continues. She spoke through harmonic vibrations that translated into words. The strong lead, the weak follow, and the universe maintains its proper balance. But their confidence was about to be shattered forever. The arrival on the outer edge of the Zarian system, space monitoring stations detected something impossible. Energy signatures unlike anything in their databases materialized from the void, growing stronger by the second. The technicians, mostly enslaved beings from conquered worlds, frantically checked their instruments as readings climbed beyond their equipment's limits. Sir, a nervous Solani operator called to his Corvan overseer. We're detecting massive displacement fields approaching from coordinates that should be empty space. The overseer stomped over, his heavy boots clanging on the metal floor. Impossible. There's nothing in that scepter but void. Check your instruments again, slave. But before the technician could respond, they appeared. Not 1 ship, not 10, but hundreds of vessels emerged from what seemed like nothingness itself. They were sleek, angular craft that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their dark hulls marked with symbols that sent chills through every alien who saw them. Symbols that belonged to a species thought extinct for centuries. The lead ship, massive beyond anything the galactic powers had ever constructed, bore the name Defiant Dawn in stark white letters along its hull. On its bridge, Captain Elena Rodriguez stood with calm authority, her brown eyes scanning the tactical displays that showed the galaxy she had returned to claim. Captain Rodriguez was not what the aliens expected from their ancient records of humanity, where they remembered a primitive, divided species. She commanded a force that moved with precision that defied their understanding. Her uniform bore no ornate decorations or symbols of rank beyond necessity. Humans had learned that true power needed no display. Communications, she called to her officer, open a channel to the Dominion Council. It's time they knew we've come home. Commander Marcus Webb, her tactical officer and closest friend since their academy days, turned from his station. Alina, are you sure about this approach? We could have remained hidden longer gathered more intelligence. Rodriguez shook her head, her expression resolute. Marcus, they've had 500 years to explain where our people went. Today, they answer for every human colony that vanished, every ship that never returned, every family that was torn apart, while we were forced to hide in the void. The message, the signal, reached Celestial Prime within minutes, cutting through every communication channel with an authority that bypassed their most advanced security systems. When the transmission began, the entire Dominion Council assembly fell silent as a human face appeared on their screens, something none of them had seen in living memory. "I am Captain Alina Rodriguez of the Terran Republic Fleet." Her voice was calm but carried an edge that made seasoned warriors shift uncomfortably. 5 centuries ago, humanity was forced to invoke the Silence Protocol when your forces began, systematically destroying our colonies and enslaving our people. Today, that silence ends. Admiral Vex roared and slammed his massive fist on the council table. Impossible. The humans were wiped out. Their pathetic ships couldn't even penetrate our shields. But Rodriguez continued as if she hadn't been interrupted. "We return not as conquerors, but as those seeking justice. You will provide a full accounting of every human settlement that disappeared, every ship that vanished, and every person who was taken. You have 72 hours to comply, High Regent." Vorthek's forearms spread wide in a gesture of dismissal. "You dare make demands of the Dominion Council? Whatever ragtag fleet you've assembled cannot possibly threaten the combined might of 3 empires. Surrender now, and we may allow you a quick death." "We make no threats," Rodriguez replied, her expression never changing. "We simply inform you of reality. In 3 days, we will arrive at your capital. Prepare your answers." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. The demonstration counselor Zephyr was the first to regain her composure, her energy form pulsing with analytical light. "Scan their fleet immediately. I want to know everything about their technology, their numbers, their capabilities." The results that came back defied all logic. The human ships showed power, signatures that exceeded even ethereal technology, defensive capabilities that made Corvan armor look like paper, and movement patterns that suggested they could bend space-time itself. Most disturbing of all, their fleet seemed to be just the tip of an iceberg. Long-range sensors detected massive structures hidden throughout the system, as if humanity had been building and preparing in secret for centuries. Admiral Vex refused to believe the readings. Sensor ghosts. Human trickery. "I'll show them what real power looks like." He ordered his personal battle group, 50 of the Corvan Empire's most advanced warships, to intercept the human fleet. The engagement lasted exactly 17 minutes. The Corvan ships, each one a kilometer-long instrument of destruction that had leveled planets, approached the human formation with absolute confidence. They opened fire at maximum range, launching enough firepower to vaporize a moon. The human ships didn't dodge. They didn't raise shields. They simply absorbed the attacks as if the devastating weapons were nothing more than harsh sunlight. Then, with movements too precise to be natural, they responded. But they didn't fire weapons. Instead, each Corvan ship found its systems simply ... stopped. Engines went dead. Weapons powered down. Life support switched to emergency mode. The mighty warships drifted helplessly as the human fleet glided past them like ghosts through a graveyard. A single message appeared on every Corvan screen. "Your crews will be returned safely to Celestial Prime. Your ships will remain here as a reminder that humanity does not seek war, but will not tolerate aggression. 71 hours remain. The truth revealed in the depths of Celestial Prime. Emergency sessions convened as the three empires tried to understand what they faced. Ancient records were pulled from archives that hadn't been accessed in centuries, revealing details about humanity that the current generation had forgotten. The truth was more terrifying than any of them had imagined. Humanity hadn't been wiped out. They had chosen to disappear. When the Dominion's expansion had begun targeting human colonies, instead of fighting a war they couldn't win, humanity had activated something called the Silence Protocol. Every human ship, every colony, every trace of their civilization had vanished in a single coordinated moment, leaving the galaxy believing they were extinct. But they hadn't gone far. They had hidden in the void between star systems, in dimensions the other species couldn't perceive, in places where space itself bent to hide them. And during those 5 centuries of exile, they had evolved, not just technologically, but as a unified species, driven by a single purpose, to one day return and ensure that no other race would suffer as they had. Dr. Sarah Chen, the fleet's chief scientist, and one of the few humans who remembered life before the silence, stood in the medical bay of the Defiant Dawn, reviewing data that had taken centuries to compile. She had been just a child when her family's colony had been attacked, had watched from hiding as alien soldiers loaded her parents onto transport ships that were never seen again. "Captain," she called over the comm system, "I've finished analyzing the Dominion's communication networks. There are human biosignatures scattered across 17 different systems. They're still alive, Alina. After all these years, some of our people are still alive." Rodriguez felt a cold fire ignite in her chest. "Are you certain, Sarah?" The breaking point, the Council's desperation in the war room of Celestial Prime. Panic had replaced the confidence that had ruled for millennia. Admiral Vex paced like a caged predator, his scales darkening with rage as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Human ships had appeared in every major system, not attacking, but simply ... waiting. They hung in space like dark omens, their very presence causing trade routes to shut down and populations to flee. How did they hide an entire civilization? "High Regent." Vorthok's voice cracked with disbelief as he studied holographic displays showing the scope of humanity's return. Our sensors covered every parsec of known space. Counselor Zephyr's energy form flickered with analytical patterns as she processed the impossible data. They didn't hide in known space, she realized with growing horror. They created their own. "Look at these dimensional readings. They've been existing parallel to our reality, building, preparing, watching everything we've done for 5 centuries. Admiral Vex slammed his fist through a holographic display, sending sparks flying. "Don't care how they did it. We have the largest military force in galactic history. Gather every ship, every soldier, every weapon we possess. If these humans want a war, we'll give them extinction." But even as he spoke, they all knew the truth. The brief encounter with the human fleet had revealed technology so far beyond their understanding that it might as well have been magic. The humans had disabled 50 of the Empire's finest warships without firing a single shot, then politely returned to cruise unharmed. It was a display of power wrapped in mercy that terrified the Council more than any threat could have. The discovery. Sarah Chen materialized on the bridge of the Defiant Dawn in a shimmer of transported light, her face pale but determined. In her hands, she carried a datapad containing information that would change everything. "Captain, we've intercepted the Council's classified archives," she announced, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "I've found them. I've found what happened to our colonies. Captain Rodriguez felt the bridge go silent around her. Every human officer present knew that this moment would define their species' future. Show me, Sarah. The main screen flickered to life, displaying coordinates, shipping manifests, and records that painted a picture of systematic horror. The Corvan Empire didn't just attack our colonies. Dr. Chen's voice trembled with rage. They harvested them. Humans were classified as exotic biological resources and distributed throughout Dominion space. Commander Webb's jaw clenched as he read the data streams. Alina, they've been using our people as slaves for 5 centuries. But that's not the worst part. He highlighted a section of the records. They've been experimenting on us. Genetic manipulation, consciousness transfer experiments, treating human children as test subjects. Rodriguez felt something cold and final settle in her chest. She had hoped for a diplomatic solution, had genuinely wanted to find a path that didn't lead to war. But this changed everything. Sarah, she said quietly, how many are still alive? Approximately 40,000 scattered across 17 systems. Most are in labor camps on mining worlds, but some ... Her voice broke slightly. Some are in research facilities. They've been breeding humans in captivity. Alina, generations of our people born into slavery. The captain closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of every human soul that had suffered while her species hid in the void. When she opened them again, they held a resolve that made her bridge crew straighten with anticipation. Marcus, send a message to the fleet. All units are to begin liberation protocols immediately. Any facility holding human captives is to be secured and all subjects evacuated. Any resistance will be dealt with appropriately. And the Council, Webb asked. Rodriguez turned to face the main screen, where the image of Celestial Prime floated, like a jewel against the stars. The Council has had their 72 hours. Now they face the consequences of their choices. The liberation of New Terra, the first rescue mission, targeted a mining facility on the world the aliens called Extraction Point 7, but which had once been humanity's New Terra colony. Captain Rodriguez personally led the operation, taking a strike team aboard the stealth vessel. Silent promised to see firsthand what 5 centuries of alien rule had done to her people. What they found broke their hearts and ignited their fury. The facility was a sprawling complex of underground tunnels, where humans labored in conditions that would have killed most other species. But humanity's natural adaptability had allowed them to survive, to endure, and somehow to remember. When Rodriguez's team materialized in the central cavern, they found thousands of humans who still carried Earth's history in their memories, passed down through generations of whispered stories. An elderly man named David Morrison, his hair white from decades of labor, but his eyes still bright with defiance, was the first to approach the rescue team. He stared at Rodriguez's clean uniform, at the Earth insignia on her sleeve, and tears began streaming down his weathered face. "You came back," he whispered. "After all these years, you actually came back for us." Rodriguez knelt beside the old man, her own eyes damp with emotion. "We never forgot you, David. We never stopped looking. And now we're taking you home." The rescue proceeded with mechanical precision. Human technology allowed them to disable the facility's defenses and evacuate every captive within hours. But what they learned during the operation sent shockwaves through the entire fleet. The aliens hadn't just enslaved these humans. They had been using them as breeding stock, as experimental subjects, as entertainment in gladiatorial arenas. Dr. Chen worked tirelessly to treat the rescued humans, many of whom showed signs of genetic manipulation and medical experimentation that turned her stomach. Alina, she reported privately to the captain, "What they've done to our people. It's beyond criminal. It's a systematic attempt to reduce humanity to livestock." "How many more facilities like this are there?" Rodriguez asked, though she dreaded the answer. Based on the Council's archives, at least 30 major sites, plus hundreds of smaller holdings. "Alina, we're looking at the largest slave operation in galactic history, and humans are the primary commodity." The final confrontation, the human fleet assembled at the edge of the celestial prime system like a storm gathering strength. 500 ships of impossible design hung in perfect formation, their dark holes absorbing the light of the system's star. On the bridge of the defiant dawn, Captain Rodriguez prepared for the conversation that would determine the galaxy's future. "Open a channel to the Dominion Council," she ordered. The familiar faces of the galaxy's rulers appeared on screen, but their previous arrogance had been replaced by barely concealed fear. High Regent Vorthex's forearms trembled slightly as he spoke. "Captain Rodriguez, surely we can reach some accommodation. The incidents you refer to occurred under previous administrations. We are prepared to offer reparations, territorial concessions." "Silence," Rodriguez cut him off, her voice carrying authority that made the alien leaders flinch. "You had 72 hours to provide answers. Instead, we found the answers ourselves. We found our people tortured and enslaved across your empire. We found children bred in captivity, families torn apart for your entertainment, entire bloodlines erased for your experiments." Admiral Vex's warrior pride finally overcame his fear. "You dare threaten the combined might of 3 empires? We have fleets that number in the thousands, armies that have conquered galaxies." Rodriguez smiled, and somehow that expression was more terrifying than any weapon. "Admiral, you still don't understand. We're not threatening you. We're informing you of what's going to happen." She gestured to Commander Webb, who began transmitting data to every screen in the Dominion's territory. "Your fleets, your armies, your weapons, we've been studying them for 5 centuries. We know every design flaw, every tactical weakness, every possible strategy you might employ. You built your empire on the assumption that might makes right. Today, you meet a species that has evolved beyond your understanding of power. The demonstration that followed would be remembered for millennia as the day the galaxy's pride died. With surgical precision, the human fleet disabled every major military installation in Dominion space simultaneously. Not destroyed, disabled. Weapon systems went offline, shield generators powered down, communication networks went silent. In less than an hour, 3 empires that had ruled for thousands of years found themselves as helpless as children. The new reality as reports flooded in from across Dominion space. The Council sat in stunned silence. Every human captive had been liberated, every research facility evacuated, every slave camp emptied. The humans had accomplished in hours what should have been impossible even with years of preparation. "How?" Counselor Zephyr whispered, her energy form flickering weakly. "How did you become so powerful?" "How?" Counselor Zephyr whispered, her energy form flickering weakly. "How did you become so powerful?" Captain Rodriguez's expression softened slightly, showing not triumph but the deep sadness of a species that had been forced to evolve beyond their nature. "You taught us, Counselor, when you scattered humanity across the void, when you enslaved our children and tortured our elders. You taught us that the universe is not a kind place, so we became unkind. When you showed us that mercy was weakness, we learned to be strong. When you proved that trust was foolish, we learned to be wise." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But unlike you, we remember what we were before we had to become what we are. We remember cooperation, compassion, the belief that different species could work together for something greater than conquest." Dr. Chen appeared on the transmission, standing beside rescued humans whose freedom had cost the galaxy its illusions. "The question now," she said quietly, "is whether you're capable of learning what we had to learn the hard way. Whether you can choose to be better than what you've become." High Regent Vorthak's voice was barely a whisper. What do you want from us?" Rodriguez looked at the alien leaders who had once seemed so powerful, so untouchable. "We want you to remember this day. Remember that there are consequences for cruelty, that power without wisdom leads to ruin, that every species deserves the right to exist in freedom." She gestured to her fleet, which began moving with purpose toward the galaxy's trade routes and communication hubs. "The Dominion Council is dissolved. Your empires will learn to cooperate instead of conquer, to trade instead of steal, to negotiate instead of threaten. And if you ever again mistake kindness for weakness, if you ever again think that might makes right." The transmission ended, leaving the former rulers of the galaxy staring at empty screens. Outside their windows, human ships patrolled the void like silent guardians, their dark hulls reflecting the stars of a galaxy where pride had finally met its match. The age of the Dominion was over. The age of accountability had begun. And somewhere in the rescued colonies and liberated worlds, human children born in captivity looked up at the stars for the first time as free beings, while their parents whispered stories of a world called Earth and a species that never forgot its own. The galaxy's pride had ended the day humanity's fleet appeared. But from its ashes, something better might finally have a chance to grow. Asterisk.